Everybody, Pat Windrow once again at the Cable Easel with a little program which is devoted to painting and drawing from life. Most of the time it's scenes. Many times it's still life and flowers and things, but for the most part, for the local origination thing that we're trying to promote here at this station, it's scenes of places familiar to you, or hopefully will become familiar to you through this program. And the trick is that we go out with a little crew of one and a camera, and we set up and take a scene of my choosing, and then it's projected here on the monitor, and that's what I work from. Behind me, right over here, is a study of the mountain range in Virginia, where I have been living recently, and that is done from life. But this is done as close to life as you possibly can get. So, this program is Setauket Harbor Park. It is just off Route 25A. It's a rather enchanting scene at any time of year, and in the wintertime it does not lose anything except that it's gotten a little bit less green, and certainly just as mysterious as it is in the summertime. The ducks still come here, and so do the Canada geese, and the reflections are actually the thing that makes me interested in these water scenes. I love the reflections. They do something particular to a painting, namely it gives you the opportunity to make something appear to be something quite wonderful and mysterious. I'm always concerned with composition, and so let me start here on this blank canvas, which I've put a border around it so that it's easy to carry, and so that it also can afford some sort of delineation of where the mat would go when you finally decide to frame it. The horizon line is on this planet. It is a perfectly straight line when you're at this level. When you're down on the ground level, the horizon is straight across. It is horizontal, hence the word horizon. When you get up a little bit higher, it becomes curved, because we are, after all, on a round place here. But from this level, it's horizontal. I'm just going to put it there because it peeks through the composition, namely of all these wonderful sort of brambly old willows that in the summertime are very green and yellowish in the fall, but now they're just spindly branches. And the little park has got a natural pond which is being fed by an underground stream that goes underneath Route 25A and disappears into the recesses of South Setauket. Here is the general composition for this lovely scene, which you see only very quickly as you're scooting down 25A towards Port Jefferson. This is to your left as you're going towards Port Jefferson. But here with the snow, you can see I'm just going to sort of lay out very, very simply the curve of the water line as it goes out to the harbor, which of course at this time when this scene was shot, it is frozen solid, and a lot of rather wonderful activities are taking place out there in the harbor on the ice, which is extremely thick, and that'll be the subject of another show. But here is what I'd like to talk about: composition and the interest that lines create. Here is a curve, which is one of the things that made me sort of feel that this is really worth stopping and looking at. These sort of scalloped lines that are taking place in the foreground here is the shoreline of this little body of water. The park was built not too long ago, I believe less than 2 years ago. At one time, it was just a sort of an abandoned catch-all place which didn't have any charm whatsoever, overgrown with weeds, not visible at all. And then somehow the programs were introduced to turn it into a little park, which is what this is. Over to the right of this scene, there is a rather nice delicatessen that sets tables out in the summer and the spring, and you can sit by this little waterside area and have your lunch and whatever snacks. So here is the general composition with these nice curves. This is all to be done in paint. Here is the roof line of the Lions boatyard. I believe this is where great numbers of boats are stored, and it's only peeking through the underbrush over there. And then there's a nice, handsome, very old tree that is growing off here and sending off its multiple branches. And over here in the foreground, to give you some feeling about, oh, I've got it placed wrong. Got to bring this foreground up here. Here is this the foreground tree. It's the vertical that we're always looking for, almost as an anchor to hang your hat on. This vertical is a little sapling. More than likely in a few years it'll grow into something much more important, but right now it is just the vertical that we need for this nice composition. Well, so much for this messy arrangement here, but it is something that I must attend to when I talk about composing pictures, because a lot of people are very distressed by the word composition. It seems to bring up the terrible angst about how to compose something, and so it should. But once somebody like me is willing to show you, oh, this thing really spat out the oil on the surface of the tube. Of course, all oils are oil-based, and this one happened to have had a lot accumulated in the front. Let me show you how that works. There's a lot of tube inside a tube of oil, and it'll come out if the tube has been lying down for a long time. But there it comes, nice and pliable. This is quick drying white, put out by the Grumbacher people, and I many times mix my colors right on the canvas. It's probably not the most acceptable way of doing it, but I find that because if I'm out in the environment and I want to carry as little as possible, I can use the canvas as my palette. MG Quick Drying White is a very heavy pigmented paint which dries quickly. It's exactly the kind of thing that that painters want when they're working out of doors, so that when you prepare a sky, for instance, by the time you get back to doing an overlay of the objects that are in front of the sky is no longer as oily and as difficult to handle as with ordinary paint. This lays down and dries rather in a nice cooperative way, so that you can, in fact, put all your branches and so on over it. The way I put the paint on is very quick, because when you are working out of doors, you're working against time, and time slips by, and so you have to work as quickly as possible for certain areas. You can always refine the work later when you get back to your own place and where you're not subjected to the winds and the cold and all the vagaries of being out of doors. I'm going to use a sort of a smooth technique here. Many times I use a palette knife and I leave it very textured, but because of the presence of tiny leafless trees and the branches, I want to be able to work that nice feeling about the branches on a smooth background instead of on a very textured one. So here is the laying out, and as you can see, my layout with some of the areas of brush and so on have been covered over, because I'm going to paint over them anyway. The lack of color in the wintertime, it's extremely pale, and of course all very easy to live with. These colors are wonderfully marriageable to the interior decors of most people's homes. Pale paintings are far more easy to live with, in my opinion, than the ones with the enormous amounts of very splashy and very bold color. So if that kind of thing is ever in the back of anybody's mind, then this is the tip. Pale pictures, to be done in the wintertime. Naturally, we all realize that the color is virtually gone from the landscape, but that never really, the painting of the Blue Ridge Mountains behind me has really a color scheme of about 3 colors, just varying shades of 3 colors. this one. It's got the mauve and the rust tones and then the very pale blue of the sky, and that's 3. And the rest of it is all sort of a melange of tones that are very subdued and very what they call limited palette. So that's the Shenandoah River as you're looking on the monitor, and there that great, wonderful, pale, mauvish peak there is called High Knob. It's right there in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and I thought I'd bring it in so that you could see where I'm staying for most of the time, with the exception of coming up here to do this program. I'm mixing up kind of a nondescript greenish nothing tone for the distance there, which is to be kept very low key. It's in the gray tones because everything, well, that's a little bit too green at this point. I have to make sure that when I talk about a limited palette that I keep it limited. And the lack of color, of course, makes you realize that you have to make everything work very specially. With you can't seduce people with color with these winter pictures. You have to get to them with the composition and the unusual quality of the air and the mystery, of course, of the fact that there's nothing around there to suggest trees in the way of greens. It's all very subtle. And of course it's very intriguing to me. And with the electronic business of being able to go out with a video camera, you can do exactly what is done here. You go out with your own video camera and you shoot your scene, and then you come back and work at it from your own TV set. So here is sort of a suggestion of what is happening way off in the distance there. That is not way off in the distance. It's it's right across the harbor, and it's called Strong's Neck. In case anybody who is tuned in onto this knows where that is, that's the name of it. And there is a lot of activity going on in the distance there as far as snow and ice is concerned, because in this remarkable period of the year, there is ice where it never is usually, and where it hasn't been for a very long time. And ice and snow are always better painted absolutely pure. The application of this pure white here, and I've just dropped my tube, which I will retrieve in just a moment. This is all the frozen harbor. Extraordinarily enough, Setauket Harbor. It hasn't happened, to my knowledge, as extensively as this in at least 80 or 90 years. And the last time that it was this frozen, it was in 1975, I think, when I painted Setauket Harbor, frozen almost all the way across. So here we have an unusual condition, and also a very paintable one, because when the weather does this kind of thing, it's to be caught fast. You have to be a recorder of the event, and the event, of course, is this paralyzing winter time. Way off in the distance, as usual, way off in the distance, there are things happening that have to be prepared for the little events that are going to take place as you come towards the foreground. So, with a very short break right now, I will be right back, and I'll prepare my palette with enough paint so it doesn't fall down. So I'll be right back. Here we are back again. Promise not to drop my paint again, and proceed with this preparation for what is going to take place in the foreground, because most of this painting is foreground. However, before you get to the foreground, you've got to prepare the background. And that is the process, which I hope is of interest enough for you to not tune out and find something else, like Mark Russell or something that can make you laugh. This is not funny. This is many times just plain ordinary boring, except that it's the foundation for the learning of how to do landscape painting. And if anybody is tuned in and really wants to find out how to do it, this is not too painful a process. Here are the events that are taking place way off in the distance, way back there. This is all muck and slime and mud and everything, just visible as a little band of darker color. And all this pale ochre here that I have are marsh grasses that have turned yellow in the season. One of the reasons that the Three Village area here is almost eternally fascinating is because the color schemes of the things that you're used to changes with the seasons. They're always there. The marsh grasses are always here. They're just different color. And that's very much like what you find in the mountains, too. The mountains are always there. What happens is that their attitude changes about what they look like. So landscape painters are very much attuned to what the atmosphere does to the landscape. Here, this little pale body of almost so pale blue that it doesn't really look blue is whatever is reflected from a very gloomy and cloudy sky in this dark period of the winter time, but also in a period of the winter time when you can get a great deal done, namely to study what there is that's going on around you. It is very much easier to paint green trees and yellow flowers and green grass than it is to paint things which are virtually colorless, but it is sometimes far more intriguing to paint these things that are almost colorless. Believe me, I think that you will find that if you do, in fact, pursue the idea, you will learn rather extraordinary things, that the shadows on snow and ice tend to be sometimes almost actually very deep cobalt blue, something that is only experienced if you yourself are out there looking at it saying, now what color is that anyway? And you discover by mixing enough blue you will get it right. Here is what happens with this distance picture here. There's an awful lot of flotsam and jetsam, some dark objects that are sort of appearing here from the a sunken boat, for instance. Probably this dark area here looks to me like it's a boat that is trapped in the ice and sunk back there, and then there are a couple of other things. There seems to be another one that is on its side, and it's just showing a dark surface to it. But what I've done now is to get a little bit closer. What I need to do, as I tell you, to come forward in the composition, I'm now going to use some drying oil. It's in this bottle. It's called Cobalt Dryer. It is deep in tone. You can only use it with dark colors, but it renders the paint into a consistency whereby you're going to be able to make extremely wonderful, very well spiny and spindly branches. One of the signs of the person who has not been given these particular tips of how to do this is branches that are too thick. And the need to amateurs find themselves a little bit intimidated by this, and they're not willing to do it. But here's a demonstration of how you can, in fact, get the spiny and spindly look of the winter leafless branches that all sort of turn into a haze. But they have to be comprehended, and they have to be understood, and be made to see exactly what the texture is. I'm interested in texture, not only the texture of these trees, but I love the texture of a skin of an onion and the texture of a human cheek. And texture is one of the things that realists are very concerned with. And as you can see there, we're getting the illusion of all this gray matter, and it becomes indistinct in many places, and that gives it the painterly quality. Not the entire little thicket of growth here is not going to be done with those brush strokes. It's going to be done in a painterly fashion, namely bringing down a lot of this tone and giving it that that well, what can I call it? I can call it a sort of a lacy quality and a fuzzy, undetailed quality. But I think that because it's background, it can do just that. And I'm going to apply now with a larger brush. And this is the time that I'm going to be using all of my techniques at hand to get the effect that I want. The monitor shows you that all of this area back there here is indistinct, and any preconceived ideas that it has to be all spindly, just look at it very carefully. Just see that a tremendous amount of detail has been swallowed up by the distance, which of course is maybe more than you want to know about what happens in the distance of any painting. However, when you're there doing it, you will find it a valuable need to observe this kind of thing. The concentration on texture is probably one of the things that makes me what they call a sometimes super realistic painter. I do super realism, whereby I take something which is existent and I emphasize it even more. There's a need to be concerned with the texture of things if you want to pull off the gag. And when you do a painting and you're going to have the audience looking at it, you have to make sure that the audience understands exactly what you're saying. It's like telling a story. If you don't get the details right, sometimes the point of the story is missed. All right, this is now all prepared as the background for the spindly trees that are growing, and they are done with what you might laughingly call little masterful strokes of dark against the background. This is all the business of illusion, and I am certainly in the business of illusion because, as you may recall, a few moments ago, this was a perfectly blank canvas, and I'm trying to, and I am hopefully succeeding to telling you what is taking place here. It's also a matter of being able to decipher what you're looking at. If you can decipher the fact that the background here is very pale and very indistinct, and that the silhouetted trees against it are sharp in contrast, then you've been able to solve most of the problems of what is probably one of the more complex things about painting landscapes, and that is focus. If you keep your focus properly in their proper place, the verticals of these trees are in sharp focus, and the background behind them are in fuzzy focus, if there is such a thing as fuzzy focus. The monitor will tell you also that some of those wonderful pale yellow marsh grasses are also here in somewhat shadow, but they are certainly the only things that give some color to this otherwise monochromatic study. And that color is to be latched onto and really grabbed and made a point of, because whenever there's no color, you have to search to be able, not to invent it, not to put it in there if it's fake, but to, whenever there's a little bit of it, to certainly make a point of it. This is all in shadow here, and these marsh grasses are, crawling on down towards the harbor. And in the summertime, this is totally obliterated. You cannot see any of this in the summertime. It's completely overgrown. And of course, in its own way, extremely wonderful. So by all means, if you can ever find the way of stopping your car for just a moment and take a look down here in this little Setauket Park, and then if you feel good about it, you can write to your representative and compliment them for having allocated the funds to give you, and that's what it is. You've been given. You don't have to pay anything to see this. This is a gift from the town to the citizens of how to enhance this already pretty place. And whenever they do anything extra, it's definitely a gift. All right, we have over here some snow on the bank, but guess what? The snow is in shadow. So I'm mixing a little bit of cerulean blue, some white, and some Van Dyke brown. That famous Van Dyke brown comes from another program. Over here, the ice is the snow that is accumulated on this little bank over here is in shadow. Therefore, it's not going to be the brilliant white that is off there in the distance with the light hitting it. It is going to be here in the trees, and that makes sense. That makes a tremendous amount of sense. So sense is what we're after. We are after trying to make sure that you understand that the painter is also an analyst and also a reporter, telling you about conditions and telling you about places, time of day, and trying to be as accurate as possible about the telling of the story. If you're not accurate, then you take the chance that you're going to be questioned and say, where is that supposed to be, or what is that supposed to be, and where are we, and I don't know that place, and so on, instead of somebody saying, oh, I know where that is. And I think that as a reporter, you want to make your points very clear. Here is where the land becomes also very indistinct. It is dipping down into the marshland here, into this little cove with this brilliant water. Well, not as brilliant as it might be if this were a different type of day, not an overcast, cloudy day with an impending storm coming. However, it is what makes for the drama of this kind of a place. Here, and as you know, this is part one of a program to do this. Nobody in their right minds would think that you can make a wonderful painting in less than in a half an hour. There is no way that you can do that. So we split them in two, and with any luck at all, we try and get the programming so that you can follow, so that it'll be followed very shortly thereafter, and you'll remember what I did. Here is some more of those lovely and very well. I had a son once who called them cribbly trees. He used the word cribbly when they were sort of all spiky and funny like that. So these are what you might call cribbly trees, and they're growing by the water's edge, and they're sending out multiple branches like this, and then of course they will be reflected in the little pond just below them. This is the concentration on these is important because this tree is coming into the foreground, and its detail is going to be quite vital. So here, growing by the waterside, and the water is, of course, is still a perfectly blank canvas. I've painted over the area where this tree is in the foreground because that's going to take place later after all this paint has dried. I hope that the introduction of these winter paintings is going to interest the viewers to go out and do something about it. I paint winter probably as much as I do summer, maybe sometimes even more so. I'm far more interested in the details that are visible when all that green stuff is gone. And green paintings to me are not as easy to live with as these lovely subdued pastel tones. They also tell you of a time when you were experiencing the astonishing events of severe weather. With the hope that you will make it a point of tuning in the next time this program is advertised, or the next time you know that I'm on, and I am on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. On live, and then Thursdays at 11, and Fridays at 9, and maybe a couple other times that I don't remember. So it's up to you to do your homework, see if you can find out when I'm on the air, and then this program, part one of the Setauket Harbor Park, will become finished in the final and dramatic conclusion. So, hoping that you were interested enough to try and see the next one, please tune in again sometime. In the meantime, this is me continuing to paint. Bye-bye.